everybody. Good morning. I'm Ross Sadler, Director of the Center for New York City Law, and I welcome you to New York Law School and our first breakfast of this year. We are really honored to have Dennis Walcott, Chancellor of the New York City Schools, here with us today. Say a couple things. As you all know, these breakfasts are co-sponsored with financial support from Consolidated Edison, Verizon, the Greenberg-Traurig Law Firm, and the Murray Goodgold Foundation. And I wanted to just say that we all think of Sally Goodgold, who passed away this past August, who all came to every breakfast and with her foundation was one of the major supporters of what we did here and do here. And I, for one, will miss her and wrote a small obituary of her in our publication at the New York Times. And I only want to say that what she would want is this to go on, and she would mostly want the people in the audience to stand up and ask questions. So the best way to honor her is to be aggressively questioning public officials. Not, of course, Dennis Walcott doing that. He's in the honeymoon period. But that's what Sally would do, and that's what we would like. As I say, we're very honored to have Dennis Walcott here. I looked up just on his bio where he lists the assets of which he is the head, and it is remarkable. 1,700 schools, 1.1 million students, 136,000 employees, and a $23 billion budget. It is a massive undertaking, and it's an undertaking that all of us depend on in this city and around the country. The Bloomberg administration has made education, of course, one of perhaps its most highest priority, and it has been fortunate in that the continuity of control over the past period, coupled with the extraordinary achievement of mayoral control, has allowed the Bloomberg administration to really remake and to reform and to achieve much in the terms of the schools. And that job has now been handed off to Dennis Walcott, who was the Deputy Mayor for Education and Community Development through the first part of the Bloomberg administration, has wide experience in education, was President and CEO of the New York Urban League before he came to the Bloomberg administration, went to the public schools of New York City, lives in New York City, has degrees in both education and business, and is now the person on whose shoulders the city depends for the education of its children. So we are delighted to welcome Dennis Walcott.
Thank you, Ross, and good morning to all of you. It's really a pleasure to be here this morning. Ross, one minor correction. I need to correct you with our DOI commissioner here, so I don't want any misinformation out there. So Rose has to investigate me at all. It's not in business, it's in social work. So it's education and social work is my background. So Rose, just for the record, just want to let you know. It's really an honor to be here this morning. I want to say special greetings to all of you. It's so nice to be here at your first breakfast and listening to Ross set it up by having aggressive questioning. I appreciate Ross setting the stage that way. So having said that, my remarks really will be rather short because I really enjoy the interaction and the Q&A. But before I start, I really want to pay honor and respect to Sally, because I've known Sally for years and years and years and years, and that is a woman who I had a tremendous amount of respect for. Anytime I walked into a room and would see Sally, her face would light up, and Sally to me represented the quintessential New Yorker, and always giving, always making our lives better, being part of the civic fabric of New York City. So I just want to thank Sally for everything that she's done for all of us, and unfortunately not having Sally here when I'm speaking is really sad, but at the same time Sally laid, I think, a solid foundation for all of us. Now, I have a great job. I really have a great job. And there are people who will come up to me saying, I'm so sorry you're in that position, that you have to go through. And I said, don't be. I love this job. People say, well, you're still on your honeymoon. And my response to them, when you're sued the first day on your job, that ends the honeymoon right there. And so we have our lawyers in the room who protect me and us from all the lawsuits. But let me tell you why this is a great job. Because I have the responsibility on working on behalf of 1.1 million students. Who can ask for more than having a job where you're responsible for being the leader of the school system that's the largest school system in the country on behalf of 1.1 million students? Let me add a couple of factoids to what Ross laid out. I always like to talk about this when I open up, just to give people the sheer size and scope of the Department of Education. We serve 865,000 meals a day. Think about that. 865,000 meals a day. We have either the second or even possibly the first largest bus transportation system in the country. In the country. We have 1,754 schools. We have roughly 1,241 buildings. We have 135,000, 140,000 employees. When you add the number of parents in, if we were a city, we would be the 9th largest city in the country. The 9th largest city in the country. And I always smile when I look at our first day stories when we're opening up school. And people are always scurrying around to find out what went wrong. Not what went right, what went wrong. And when you talk about reopening the 9th largest city in the country from scratch, and you're starting it out the first day of school, you're going to have glitches. But for the most part, what we have done and continue to do is a fantastic job in making sure that we're providing quality education for our children and making sure that opening day of school works wonders for our students and our parents. I had the luxury of going to 5 boroughs. The opening day, I better not go to 4 boroughs, otherwise I'm going to be in a lot of trouble. I better not go to 3 boroughs, I'm going to be even bigger trouble. And when I went to 5 schools in the 5 boroughs, what I saw taking place on the first day was truly fantastic as far as education that was starting that first day. I went up to the Bronx where there was an English class where they were really into the dynamics of literacy and really understanding a book and the students debating back and forth around this particular book. When I went to Brooklyn, the students were in inclusion classes and also sharing information around the new garden they had developed over the summer. When I went to Staten Island, I met with the student government. When I went to Queens, I sat on the floor and played with first graders who were in music class. And then when we opened up school in Manhattan, you may have seen the picture on the front page of the New York Times of this young boy in his tuxedo. I don't know how many of you saw that. And this was a dapper young man in one of our brand new school buildings in Spruce Street building. And it's a great building. That's what's taking place across the entire city. Fantastic education and learning for our children and our families. And that's what this is about. Making sure that we keep the focus on our students. Some of you know this past Wednesday or Tuesday, I forget, I've lost track of days this week, I gave a speech at NYU talking about our new middle school initiative, and they were smiling because it was around a 30-minute speech. And I still haven't done this, but I wanted to count how many times I used the word students in my speech, because it is so important for us to move away from the type of dialogue that have been taking place over the past year or so and really refocus that dialogue back to our students. And so to me, this is why it's a great job. This is why when you see me either on television or in the streets or in the newspaper, I'm a happy guy. I'm a happy guy because, one, I'm working for a great mayor. And working for a great mayor makes it a lot easier to be a chancellor, because you know you have a mayor who is committed to education, who is committed to reform, who's committed to improving student outcomes, making sure you try new things, and also a mayor who's committed to making sure you're bold and aggressive in your attempts to change education and lay the foundation for our students to make sure that they're college and career ready and become successful adults. But I'm also in a great job because I have fantastic people who work with me at the Department of Education. You never really hear about them. And the people who are here in this room, like Kathleen Graham, Michael Best, and others, and colleagues who are here as well. And all this is a part of a team that's focused on making sure we're doing the best job for our students. So the announcement that I made earlier this week was about middle school reform. and how we need to really shake up our middle schools. We've made tremendous improvement in our grades from 3 to 5. We have instituted a number of new high schools, and we've had successful graduation improvement over the years, when in the past our graduation rate had basically been flat around 49 to 50%. Under Mayor Bloomberg, each year the graduation rate is going up to an all-time high of 65%. Black and Latinos rates have gone up to roughly 58% for Latinos and 60% for blacks, all-time high again. But at the same time, when you look at the system, and when you talk to people in the streets, and you talk to the parents, and even when you talk to the students, the real gap takes place in our middle schools. So what I announced on earlier this week was about reforming our middle schools, creating 50 new middle schools, basically implementing a turnaround model where we'll reform a number of new schools, moving staff out, developing a special training program for principals and others who want to be leaders in middle schools, talking about developing special cohort of programs where we have teaching fellows who are solely focused on middle schools, and we talked about how we're going to develop trying to make sure that our teachers really focus on their students in their school, where their students know who they are, and the teachers basically have responsibility for a certain core group of students in middle school. I shared the story, and I don't know about you, but I remember when I was in middle school basically for me was a blank period of time. I remember elementary school, and I can tell you every teacher that I had in elementary school. Matter of fact, I went to the funeral around 5 years ago of my kindergarten teacher, and I remember every teacher in middle school. The only teacher I remember in elementary school, only teacher I remember in middle school is my music teacher, Mrs. Stanton. And the reason I remember Mrs. Stanton is because she's the one who forced me to play the trombone. Not an instrument I wanted to play at all. And she forced me to play the trombone because she said I had long arms. And so, you know, imagine adolescence. Imagine being 12 years old and your teacher tells you you're a gawky kid probably already, and she tells you have long arms, and she wants you to play the trombone, and that's what you have to do. Then even imagine more so taking a trombone case on 2 buses, going to school with other middle school students. It is not a great experience. And that is my memory of middle school. And unfortunately, that may be the memory of a number of students in middle school. It is a very awkward period of time. You're going through adolescence, hormones are raging, first time you're changing classes, and we have a responsibility as a system to provide high quality middle schools for our students. I was on New York One earlier this week, and they asked me my favorite type of middle school design. And, you know, I like all middle school designs because, to me, if you have a quality principal and quality staff, then you will have a quality middle school, whether it's 6 through 8, K through 8, 6 through 12, or in those rare cases, a K through 12 program. To me, it's not necessarily the type of grade span that we have, it's the quality that we put in place in those middle schools. And that's what we want to accomplish over the next 2 years. I propose to create 25 new middle schools for school year 2012 and 25 new middle schools for 2013, and having that as being a mix of district schools and charter schools, and really opening up the competition of having new types of middle schools. I also propose phasing out failing middle schools as well. I also propose allocating $15 million of our state textbook money for nonfiction texts for middle schools as well, having focused attention with our literacy in middle schools around nonfiction text development and how students become more critically aware of what they're reading, and also being able to debate the subject matter as well. You're going to see major attention focused on our middle school initiative over the next year or so. Final thing before I open it up to Q&A. We have the opportunity, I think, to change lives for students over the next 2.5 years. I want to say something very clearly to all of you. This will not be a status quo period of time. We will continue to push the levers of change within the Department of Education. We will continue to try new and innovative things to make sure our children are learning at the end of the day. We will continue to improve our graduation rate. We will continue to improve new models and having competition within our schools. We will continue our co-location, making sure that we are sharing the buildings and sharing them in the proper ways. And the other thing, which I'll be talking about in another couple of weeks, is making sure we improve the involvement of our parents and families in our schools, all schools. While we do that, while the mayor has allocated $75 to $80 million for parent coordinators in our schools, which was a major commitment back in 2003, I don't think at that point in time no other city did that type of commitment, we still have a responsibility to increase the involvement of parents and families. People will tell you that you have some people who are very connected, and you will have a lot of parents who are not very connected. And it is our role as Department of Education to find new ways both to communicate with them, but also to make sure that they're engaged in what's happening in their child or their children's lives. I gave two examples in the speech of two schools that try very unique models of involving their families. One is where the school has their teachers go out to the homes on a regular basis to meet with the parents of the children in this particular school, and making sure that the parents see the teachers, know the teachers, interact with the teachers, and have that ongoing dialogue with the teachers of what's happening with their child in that particular school. And not just having it be a reactionary meeting if a child does something wrong, but around constructive and positive things that are taking place in the life of that child. I gave another example of a school that has basically their parent-teacher conference totally changed, where it's a student-driven conference, where the students lead the meetings and making sure that they bring the parents in and work with the teachers as well. Again, a greater investment on the part of the students, but also better connection with the parents by having the students mobilize their parents to come to hear how they're participating, how they're doing, and how they're functioning in the school as well. You have many, many models like that out here. Final story. This past week I went to a dinner, and I presented an award to a middle school principal. It was perfect timing, quite frankly. And this middle school principal up in the Bronx has a very interesting model where he basically breaks down roles in totally different ways as far as the teachers, and he's worked with his chapter leader and others to make sure that the teachers play a more active role, both not in just school, but also in the community as well. And then he's raised money privately where he basically has raised money to purchase books, and then he provides the books to the bodegas in this particular community as well. So that way, in addition to the literacy that the students are getting in the school, they're also able to go to the bodegas and the local stores in this particular community, and the parents and the students are able to take these books out, and they don't have to return them at all. Take them home, read them, and then he will follow up with them, and then he'll replenish the supply. There are just so many creative models out there that we want to tap into to make sure that with our middle schools, of course with all of our schools, learning is flourishing throughout the entire city. As Chancellor, my job is to make sure we talk about it on a regular basis. As Chancellor, my job is to make sure we lower the noise and temperature that really distracts from our focus on our students and learning take place. And as Chancellor, with my great team at the Department of Education, is to create an environment where innovation will take place that benefits our students in the long run. So that's why this opportunity is really fantastic to talk to all of you and to open up your series in September. But most importantly, I have a charge as well to all of you, is to deputize all of you, and to deputize all of you to be our thinkers, to be the people who provide the thought and the information and the intellectual capital on how we can make our system better. This is a collective enterprise. It's not about just the Department of Education. It's about our students. It's about our families. It's about our children. It's about people who are not the parents in the home. It's about community-based organizations. It's about advocacy groups, all coming together with a singular focus, and that focus is around our students. And my deputizing you is to be part of that focus and making sure that we all work collectively on behalf of our 1.1 million students. Thank you for inviting me this morning, and I would love to take your very aggressive questions at the end of the session. So thank you.
Joined you. There are microphones here
and at both sides. I want to see some aggressive questioning. No, you just go to the microphone and line up. It'll be fun. And so let's start over here. The first question here.
Hi. Good morning.
To be honest, I'm related to one teacher and one vice principal. Just to be honest.
All right, full disclosure. I'm related to a teacher as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
When you, yeah, when you open up new schools because the school is failing, that's rather expensive. Would it be considerable? Would it be a consideration to just review the management of the school, possibly change the management of the school, keep the same physical school there? And just change the the principal and the vice principals instead of opening up a new school and then shifting the students from school A to school B, the staff from school A to school B, and the principals go somewhere, but they have to stay in the system, of course, because they weren't necessarily fired.
There's a lot packed into that question, so let me try to sort
I hope so.
Yeah, let me sort that out. So we do a variety of different things. It's not that we just phase out schools, and I think part of the debate has always been around those schools that are phased out. We have teams in place that work with existing schools to strengthen them, and we have inquiry teams and through our networks that go out and provide the supports and to really work with schools that are not necessarily the poorest performing, but those schools that can do a lot better. From a cost effectiveness, and this question came up in a meeting I had yesterday with some of the parents around wouldn't it be cheaper just to keep the existing school. There are some schools where the culture is just bad culture, and it's a culture of failure, and those schools need to be phased out. And we've shown positive results with the new schools that we've put in place that have replaced those schools that have been phased out. If you take a look at the comparison of our graduation rates of the newer schools that have replaced the phased out schools, we have significant improvement. And so to me, there's a better return on investment when you have more students graduating in a 4 and 5 year period of time than students languishing and then not graduating. And that to me costs more both in real dollars as well as human capital. And I can't afford to have our students fail in human capital and not do well. So we've seen the results, and we're going to apply that model to our middle school strategy that we're putting in place. But in addition to that, there are those schools, and we've just announced new schools that we'll be working with through what's called an EPO, and that model will be replacing leadership and putting new leadership in and then having support organizations work with them as well. So we're up to trying a variety of models, but to me the greatest return on investment is seeing that our students are better prepared for college and careers and having a greater college preparation rate as far as attainment level is concerned, but beyond that, making sure that they're graduating in a more expedited timeline, but beyond that, not dropping out. And we've been able to turn around, and one of the things we haven't talked about publicly is the dropout rate as well. The dropout rate has continued to decline over the years, and the mayor likes to talk about he's more proud of that 5th and 6th year graduation rate because that shows where students are staying and sticking and then graduating as well. I want them to graduate. And my bottom line is that there's a school that has not been able to produce results, then we have a greater investment in returning back to the student, making sure they're able to graduate. And that's how I view it.
My name's Alice LaBrie, and I'm former U.S. Department of State Foreign Service and a New York City resident in Harlem. I wanted to give my acknowledgement to Ms. Goodgold. She used to hold my arm when I'd be in line, and she said, go ahead, ask that question. So I truly miss her for that. Just a quick comment with regard to the fact that not everybody wants to go to college or can go to college. I had a lovely conversation with Mr. Mulgrew about it, and he was very encouraging. So I'm happy to hear you say career schools in addition to education. And my last question, my question is, could DOE take over the Rice School and make it a career school?
So let me pick up on the Mr. Mulgrew comment. Michael Mulgrew and I have a very constructive relationship with each other, and we are constructive with each other because we can agree and disagree and then still communicate with each other. And where we first fostered that relationship was over lunch one day around career technical education, and that was a number of years ago. And Michael and I really have a common interest in providing quality education to our students, but also taking a look at CTE, career technical education programs. And so we're big believers in CTE schools. We've increased the number of CTE schools that are out there. And so, you know, you will see that. I was at a school before the start of school where this particular high school in Brooklyn had their 9th grade students in a week early. It was providing them orientation and really grounding them on the rigor of the school and the expectations of the school. And that was a relatively new CTE school. I think it had been in existence for 3 years or so. And so I'm a big believer in CTE. Now, connected to your Rice question, no, Rice is part of a, different type of, is part of a parochial school process. And so
that is closed,
Rice
right?
High School is closed.
Yes.
Rice is up in Harlem.
Real
So-
estate's up for sale.
Yeah, but we may not have a need for the building. I mean, if the Rice building was in District 24, like Jackson Heights or other high-need areas where we had a need, then we would definitely take a look at Rice. Our capital budget, even though our capital budget is $11.1 billion, our capital budget is targeted to really high-needs areas. So I'm not sure that Rice building itself fits the need of where we have to have new buildings to respond to overcrowded districts.
Thank you.
Good morning. When you were head of the New York Urban League, the MTA announced plans to do a 20% fare increase on New York City Transit while not increasing or increasing at a lesser degree the fares on the suburban lines. And the Urban League with the Strap Hangers campaign sued the MTA saying that these increases would have a disparate racial impact. 8 years later, you're deputy mayor for education, and the DOE announced plans to lay off several hundred paraprofessionals, mostly minority, lower paid, while not cutting the teaching and administrative workforce. The paras union, the UFT, sued, charging that these layoffs would have disparate racial impact, and you were quoted at the time saying that it was unfortunate that they brought race into this. Now,
Where was I quoted saying that?
in the Times. In the Times.
UFT didn't sue us around that. UFT sued us around the phasing out of schools.
No, this is 2003. They made the claim.
Oh, back in 2003?
Yeah. Now, 8 years later, your chancellor and the DOE has announced plans to lay off 800, again, mostly lower-paid minority school aides. Their union, this time Local 372, is crying foul. So my question is, to the observer looking at this saying he left the Urban League and went to work for the city and he changed his tune, what would you say?
Well, a couple of things. One, I am who I am, and that has not changed at all. I'm committed to my city, to my students, and I view this as a responsibility of making sure we're providing quality education. So I'm still the same person, and I believe in making sure that all of our students get a quality education. As far as the workforce is concerned, for this year in particular, basic average cut size for our schools was roughly 2.48%. And as a result of continuing decline in revenue from the federal government and the state government, the city, thanks to the mayor, put in an additional $2 billion from its reserve fund to stave off even more layoffs. And as a result of the mayor putting that $2 billion in, we were able to find a way to try to maintain some level of high-quality education when maintaining our teachers and our workforce. And then as a result of principal empowerment, we empowered the principals to decide how they were going to meet their 2.48% on average budget deficit. And so principals made decisions. And as a result of an agreement with the UFT and the City Council, teacher layoffs were not part of that discussion at all. And so we were not able to and not going to lay off teachers. And so principals then had to make decisions on how they were going to deal with their cuts in their school. And they made decisions based on the parameters that were set for them, but they made the individual decisions. We did not look at the racial impact because principals did the decision making. Unfortunately, DC 37, at that point in time when we were negotiating with the City Council and the UFT, made a couple of proposals and walked away, and so there were a variety of back and forth that took place that didn't materialize into something concrete. And as a result of that, then the principals had to make decisions. Some of them took it through OTPS. Some of them took it through personnel. But they definitely could not take it through teachers. And that's what happened. And unfortunately, 700 and so, roughly, people will be laid off. And that was as a result of the challenge of the budget that we have. So I'm the same person. I'm not changing. You will see me the same way all the time in the streets, dealing with the issues of importance to the community, and that's how I will always be.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Pat Jewett, and I am co-PTA president for 138. I spoke with you on another occasion. I am the proud mother of Aja, who is a middle schooler just starting and autistic in an inclusion program at Esperanza Preparatory Academy. My basic questions are on behalf of all students who are in inclusion. The busing issue, that's one major issue, is that the busing is not set up to be conducive for these children to arrive in a timely fashion to start their day with the other gen ed students. That's a disadvantage. I took the initiative. I take Aja to school every morning at Esperanza Academy.
Where is it located?
It's on 109th between 2nd and 3rd.
Okay.
At Esperanza Academy, they have a mandatory breakfast club, which is a good thing. They get to drop off their homework. They get to interact with the teachers first thing in the morning if they have any homework questions that they didn't resolve the night before. All this is good. But if you don't have a parent that can help your child in inclusion get to that school in a timely fashion to participate, your child is now 3 steps behind. If we are about the quality education of all children, we have to change the strategy on how we provide busing. This goes across the board with a few things. Not only children that are in inclusion.
May I just interrupt? We have a very long line. I
I'm-
think you made a
I'm-
question.
So let me respond to your busing. I mean, I hear you. And so it so happens the Deputy Chancellor who is responsible for busing is here. And this is the 12th day of school, roughly. And so with busing, as we shake out the system, we're always going to improve on the timing of our buses and then take a look at how we route buses that give what you need the opportunity to take place. And so if there's a specific issue around the busing of your child and your child getting there.
No, it's not specific because
Oh, I thought you said-
Aja's been in inclusion for 4 years. This problem happens every year. And I understand you have a long line, but it's not
Wait, no,
just
ma'am,
a personal problem.
Ma'am, we do like to have
Okay.
everybody question. I
It's
think it was a
okay.
very good
No,
question.
but I want to try to take a response, give you a response to your question. I mean, with busing, when I hear issues about bus routes being too long, then we get the information and then we get it to our people to try to resolve the problem, because sometimes, especially with certain areas, the bus route may be too long, and that means we have to do it differently. You're shaking your head no. I don't know why you're shaking your head no. I'm trying to give you a
It's
response
okay. It's
to
all
your
right.
question.
But-
In that, if there are specific issues around busing, then we want to know about them so that way we can make the adjustments, because our goal is to make sure that that child or those children are getting to school in a timely manner. So all I'm saying is, let me know.
You do understand that I'm not talking about a specific child with a specific. I'm going to step off the line.
Well, let
because
me
it's not
just,
a
no, I want
specific.
to add, Kathleen Grimm is the Deputy Chancellor who's in charge of us and is walking to the back room, and she'd be delighted to talk to you directly about a problem like that. So let's go to the other side.
Good morning, Chancellor.
Good morning.
As you know, every year the Department of Education spends millions of dollars on private school education
Yep.
for special needs students who can't be accommodated in the public school, and this is not a new phenomenon. And I'm wondering if you can speak about what efforts the department is making under your leadership to expand programs that have worked, such as the ASD Nest program, the ASD Horizon program for high-functioning autistic children, because, at least from my perspective, there are too few slots, and I think it's clear that there aren't even enough slots in the private schools for all the students who need them.
So through Deputy Chancellor Laura Rodriguez, we are always taking a look at how we expand our quality programs to make sure, whether it's through high-functioning autistic children or other type of needs, we're doing in a way that gives the quality for that parent, because we don't necessarily want that parent to have their child to go to a private school. We want them to stay within the public school setting. So Laura has been working with her team to take a look at where those options are and then how we improve those options. And as you probably know, through our implementation of CSIS, our Phase 1 program, our goal is to make sure we have the information in a better way, more real-time information, and track that information so that way we can identify where the needs are and then expand the programs where we have the need. Through the Turning 5 process and also through the Turning 3 process, we are always looking to see where we have that high need, but also trying to make sure where there are inappropriate referrals, that we control that as well, because then that's the expenditure of dollars where they don't need to be expended. So our goal is definitely to expand. We're always trying to make sure that those programs that are already at high level, that they're meeting their mandate, but also those who are not functioning well, we work to address their needs and improve their outcomes. So we are always looking for that. Maura has been doing that in, I think, a very focused way.
Good morning. My name is David Bloomfield. I'm a professor at Brooklyn College and the CUNY Grad Center and former president of the Citywide Council on High Schools, where we were totally ignored by the administration. 10 years in, this system is Mayor Bloomberg's system. The children who are graduating or not graduating have had the vast majority of their school careers during this administration. Despite your rosy numbers, the majority of high school graduates can't do college or career-ready work. The middle schools, by my reckoning, I guess this is at least the second overhaul of the middle school system because of the crisis there. There's accelerating numbers of failing schools, schools which failed on Bloomberg's watch. I understand this is a very hard job. I'm the former general counsel to the Board of Ed. What has gone wrong that the data aren't better than what you portray because so many kids still aren't able to succeed?
So when you were general counsel of the Board of Ed, the average graduation rate was 49 and 50% and stayed flat during that period of time for years and years and years. And when you take a look at the same metrics under the mayor, that number has gone up significantly. If one analyzed the college readiness rate and career readiness rate back then, especially if you take a look at a flat graduation rate of 49 to 50%, even though the numbers weren't analyzed that way then you'll probably see even worse numbers when you were general counsel of the Board of Ed. And I only say that in context because when you take a look at the baseline of where we were compared to where we are now, you have seen significant improvement as far as the outcomes are concerned. And we're very open and honest about the need to improve our college and career readiness rate. Very clear about that. And that discussion has been taking place as a result of the mayor and as a result of the state as well, in that our students, even if they're graduating, going on to college, need to do better. And we're very clear about that. So when you talk about the rosy picture, I'm giving you a realistic picture, not a rosy picture. The numbers are the numbers. And we also are very honest as far as the college and career readiness needs, and we're working on that. That's what Common Core is about. That's what we're talking about over the last 2 years, and we're going to be focused on that. When you talk about the issue of middle schools, one, just because something may or may not have worked doesn't mean you don't try something new. I mean, that's part of life. You take a look, see where it didn't work, and then you improve on that. I would be remiss if I didn't try for us to attack middle schools and have an improvement in middle schools. That's part of our job. That's part of my job. So, I've heard people say, well, something didn't work 4 years ago, something didn't work 5 years ago, therefore implying you shouldn't try something new. That's ridiculous. You should always take a look at how you improve outcome for our students. That's what this job is about. So I don't have any problems if something did or did not work before. It's not going to stop me from having my team and for me to take a look at how we make sure that we do it and attack it in a way that shows results. As far as the opening and dealing with, you were a member of the committee and high schools and people were ignored, I don't think people were ignored. We hear people. You may not have liked the response. You may not like how we responded to you. But what I've been saying since I've been chancellor is that we'll be talking to folks and people who agree, disagree on a regular basis. I will be out in communities that agree, disagree, in districts all over the city, already been there. We'll be back again. I'm not afraid or shy in going to places and talking to people who may not believe in what we're saying, but they will definitely hear what I'm saying, what we're saying, because what I'm saying is about our 1.1 million students. So the negative neighbors who are out there doesn't bother me at all. That's part of the job. This is New York City. Our responsibility is to make sure we keep those energies and attentions and ideas focused on our students.
Let me just make one comment. I think that this is probably the wrong audience to encourage aggressive questioning. I had no idea.
No, Ross, you missed one part of what you said, though. It's going to be aggressive questioning, but it's going to be aggressive response as well. I don't have any problem being aggressive about it. but I will always be respectful about it. That's the bottom line.
Let's go to this.
I'm Skip Hartman with the New York Junior Tennis League and the Sports and Arts and Schools Foundation. We provide a lot of after-school programs in probably about 100 schools. We're very concerned about co-location and the impact it has on the kids in the schools. We get caught sort of in the middle of it a lot. It's a particularly difficult problem when you just break up one school into 2 or 3 schools. Then if you break it up into 1 or 2 schools and add a charter school, it's even a more difficult management problem. I would be interested in your perspective on the management issues here and how the Department of Education hopes to address them.
So we have a responsibility to make sure that we fully utilize our buildings. I mean, these buildings are taxpayer buildings, and we've had buildings in the past that have been basically at 50% utilization, 60% utilization, 70% utilization. So you have a lot of space that's not being utilized properly because people either have moved or people have walked away from a particular school to go to another school, and that's the individual's choice. But as a system, we have responsibility to make sure that we take advantage of the schools that are there and the buildings that are there and build on where the space is available. So I'm a big believer in co-locations, and co-locations, one, from a cost efficiency point of view, allows us to use the buildings in a way that's more productive. 2, it allows space to be shared with schools and having building councils in place to have the management of those respective schools decide on the best way of allocating the space itself and the use of common areas such as gyms and lunchrooms, and making sure that from the Department of Ed we manage that to make sure there is a shared dynamic taking place within those buildings. And sometimes you'll have difficult relationships within buildings, but I know more buildings than not where those relationships are flourishing and doing well. I mean, some of the buildings I became involved in when I was deputy mayor, like the old Walton campus in the Bronx, have a number of schools there, and I was actively involved with them in my former life, and they're flourishing. I remember a school in Flushing where there was some tension in the beginning, and they formed a very strong building council, and they're flourishing. Most of the buildings that are co-located are doing well. Naturally, people who may have been the host school don't want to share space. They've gotten used to being in a building that may have been at 70% utilization. They expand, and as a result of that, they're comfortable with that type of expansion and not having to share that space. But as a system, we have a responsibility from a cost point of view, and also as we develop and grow new schools, to plan it out properly, where there is shared space and there is an active building council to manage that space, and for us to manage the information that we get around the building councils. In reference to the charter schools, I mean, a lot of the noise, a lot of the public noise has taken place around the charter co-locations, but the majority of the co-locations are non-charter schools. And these schools have been sharing space for a while in a number of the buildings. The old Martin Luther King campus has probably either 5 or 6 schools located in it. And so you have a lot of schools that are not charters that are co-located in those buildings. And I'm a big believer in co-locations. And co-locations, quite frankly, allows us to grow the schools, one, but also even with a huge capital budget, it allows us to really give options available to our families and our students. And I'm a big believer in options. I wish I had the options that are available now when my children are in school. I mean, it's really amazing. And I want to give a little plug. Tomorrow, we have our high school fairs. And so we have a huge directory with all the new high schools as well as the existing high schools that have been in place. And at our high school fair, that'll take place at Brooklyn Tech High School from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m., Saturday and Sunday, so let your folks know about it. You will see people competing for those students. That's a great thing. When I go into the high school fairs in my undeputy mayor attire in the prior years, and I just happen to walk through the buildings and I see what's going on. There's students there, there are parents there, there are administrators and teachers there, because they want to attract students. And you got a lot of that taking place within co-located buildings. So I'm a big believer in co-locations. And I'm not going to say, though, that there aren't buildings where co-locations may not be working well. And our job is to make sure we manage that and make sure that they do work well, because it is part of the responsibility of the system itself.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Ellen McHugh. I'm from Parent to Parent of New York State, and I played the violin because they told me I had a big chin.
So my long arms and your big chin would have made a heck of a combination.
Think of what we could have done.
I know. But it may wind us up on the gossip pages, so we got to be careful not saying that too often.
Every knock's a boost. I'm also a member of the Citywide Council on Special Education, and part of our role, I guess, is to respond to information from the Office of Family Engagement and Advocacy, or whatever it is called now. For most of us, it's deemed as a punitive measure because we only hear from people when they want a list of our activities or our expenses, or whether or not we are in control of our meetings. Anyway, I am curious to know how you're going to reform the Office of Parent Engagement, Advocacy, and Place Settings, or without illusion or alliteration. Clear.
Without illusion or alliteration, wow.
You can compare and contrast at this point.
Well, I mean, you're going to be somewhat disappointed with my response, but I'll tell you why. Because on the 22nd, most likely, of October, give or take, my press secretary just had a heart attack in the back because I gave out a date. We're not confirmed yet. We're going to be talking about, where we're going with our office. One of the first things I did, as you well know, is that I hired Jesse Mojica as the executive director of the office itself. And Jesse has had a long and active role in communities and with parents up in the Bronx, working first for Adolfo Carrion and then for Ruben Diaz. And so Jesse is putting his plans in place as far as the next steps, as far as not just around special education, but just our overall role with families. And so I'll be talking more about that over the next several weeks, whether it's the 22nd or not, over the next several weeks. And I've been very clear and I've been very accessible as far as families and parents are concerned. As you know, I go to all the boroughs, I go to different meetings, I meet with all the CECs, and I've sat down and talked about the role. Yesterday I was at what's called CPAC, which is the Chancellor's Parent Advisory Committee, and I think we had a very productive discussion, correct? I see heads nodding there, a head nodding there, and I was originally supposed to stay for a certain period of time and just blew away a meeting to stay a longer period of time. And I indicated to CPAC, Chancellor's Parent Advisory Committee, that I'll be working closely with them as we design what our next steps will be. So I'm a big believer. I'm a grandparent. I'm a parent of public school children or former public school children. And I believe in the role of parents and families in making sure we get the input. So through the office, it will reflect my vision and viewpoints. It will reflect the input of Jesse, most definitely, as far as him being the executive director. And that'll be coming out over the next several weeks. So that's why.
As a follow-up, how are you seeking that information from the CECs?
So you will hear from me in another week or so as far as that input is concerned. And then what I said to CPAC yesterday was that I will definitely be working with them. And I have an independent affirmer here that I didn't plant in the audience, where that will be a true part of what I'll be doing, getting that input, because I want to get it right. I'm very clear as far as the dynamic and the role and all the challenges as far as involving our families and parents, because you have families who are focused solely on their child's school. And that's all they want. They want to be focused on what's happening and how do we get the information, how do we know what's going on in real time, and how do we as a system make sure that the information is worthwhile for them as far as knowing exactly where their child is, where we are with Common Core, what it means for their child or their children in their specific grade, and making sure that's totally integrated into the mainstream. And I want to try to tackle that and making sure that's an ongoing information point for them. Then you have parents who are involved in CECs, the community education councils, bless you. And so making sure they want to get information and be involved in that regard. So both from a mandate point of view, but also from my own way of operating point of view, I have been and will be out to all the CECs to listen and talk, and sometimes you'll hear from me formally, and sometimes I'll go out on my own without people knowing it. That way I get the flow and what's going on. You'll hear me and going out to, not all, because I would go totally bananas and be not productive from a workflow point of view, but to PTA meetings and listening to dynamics and talking about the role of PTAs, what are PTAs in the 21st century, and how do we operationalize a 21st century PTA? What does that actually mean? So there are going to be a variety of touch points for me getting the information, but also giving the information out as well.
Chancellor, good morning. My name is Steve Cohen, and I'm a student here at the law school, so I apologize in advance when I'm a half hour late for class. 15 years ago, I was privileged to co-chair a White House task force for the Clintons on early childhood literacy, and two facts stood out from the commission. The first was that Texas still uses third grade reading scores to estimate the number of prison cells they're going to need 15 years down the road. Second is that the most effective, and I want to touch on ROI and parent involvement, the most effective way to improve chances of literacy is between the ages of 6 months and 5 years, reading to children, giving them the pre-literacy skills they need to succeed in learning how to read. Is your office doing anything looking at groups like Reach Out and Read, the pediatric literacy initiative that costs about $10 per child per year and has that impact of increasing the success of learning how to read by almost 300%? Out of the box partnerships.
So you have heard me today talk about literacy in a variety of ways, and I've talked about it basically since I've been chancellor, and we're focused on not just literacy in middle school and high school, but also what we do with pre-K as well as the early grades as well. And to even break your information down further within certain groups, students or children know fewer words by the time they get to kindergarten, which is to me unacceptable. We should have all students starting with school at the same playing field, same level itself. And we have a responsibility as a system, but families also have a responsibility to make sure that they both read to their children as well as having their children read books and read books early on. So you will hear more from me, because I can't give it all away now in September as far as what we'll be doing, but early grades is extremely important. Early learn is extremely important. And the ability to have our families and our students both know what's expected of them, but also providing the opportunities for them to take advantage of what's expected of them, I think is something that the department will be focused on as we move forward. I will not be shy in talking about issues that both impact us from a systems point of view, but I will also not be shy in talking about issues that impact us from a community point of view as well, because it's not just about government. It's about the role of the community and the role of the community stepping up to the plate as well, as far as our responsibility as a community to make sure that we prepare our children to go to school and to support them in school and making sure they're able to compete equally in school. So it's not just a one-way street as far as government is concerned, and that's the title, and a nice way, I think, to wrap it up, because I get it to NBC, to really talk about the title. It's not just about us. It's about all of us working together, and that involves the parents and the community itself. So
I'm going to have to be apologetic to the people standing. We always end at 9:30, so I'm afraid this will be the last question. I do apologize, those who have been standing. Perhaps you can talk to the deputy before, afterwards.
Oh.
Yes, you may ask.
Oh, yes.
It's you.
Yeah. My name is Donald Graff. I'm a research associate at New York Civic, which is a good government nonprofit group. My question is about what is currently being done to retain many of the younger teachers, newer teachers, people like with Teaching Fellows, Teach for America, recent college graduates. More specifically, what does the future hold for ATR, which I believe is the absentee teacher
reserve pool, right?
Yeah, which I read on the Citizens Budget Commission in a recent article. They question the effectiveness of it in terms of cost. So it's kind of a two-part question. What does the future hold for ATR? And also, does that kind of correlate to retaining some of the younger, newer teachers who, seem to be adversely affected when new charter schools open and older schools close?
So for the audience itself, so the ATR pool are those teachers who have either been accessed from a school, or where a school is phased out, they go into what's called an ATR pool, the absent teacher reserve pool. And we have analyzed the information, and so the ATRs will be going to schools starting in, I think, October to help with substitute teaching and other types of supports along that line, and that'll be on a rotating basis. And we are restricted based on the union contract as far as keeping the ATRs, and we don't have the flexibility of having, after a certain period of time, if an ATR doesn't have a job, to have that ATR no longer with the system. And so, we'll always see what happens in discussions with the union. You never know. As far as the newer teachers are concerned, our goal is to keep our newer teachers. I've been on public record saying I'm not a believer in tenure. I don't think anyone should have a lifetime job guarantee. We should have a robust evaluation system. People should know where we are. We've been working collectively with the UFT in a very productive way around modeling an evaluation system and how it looks, and we're implementing it in a small group of schools. Our goal is to expand that as well. And I think, to me, is whether it's not seniority that matters, it's the effectiveness of the teacher that matters itself, and providing the information to the teachers from their principals through evaluations and other measures of objective data review to tell them how well they're doing and what we need to do to support them to do better as well. And that, I'm not sure where you sat down at, but that, to me, that goes to the issue of trying to retain our younger teachers. We're going to be facing challenges moving forward, and our goal is to have quality teachers in front of the classroom and making sure that they get the supports and professional development. So that's why, with the start of school this year, we delayed it by a day. From September 7th to September 8th, so we could add a professional development day around Common Core, and that way we were able to provide more PD to the teachers, and I think the more PD we're able to provide, the better off the teachers and the workforce are, and that means our students and wind up better as well. Okay? Thank you very much. Thank you all.
I want to thank the Chancellor for really could you wait 1 second, please? A really stimulating morning, and I think an example of how important it is to bring somebody into a position like Chancellor who has the kind of experience he has. He demonstrated such great knowledge, and as we always do, we like to give a present to the person who speaks at our breakfast. I'd like to add one thing, though, which is I came across a diploma from 74 years ago from the Needle Trades High School, and it's the Central High School of Needle Trades, a diploma in satisfactory completion of the course of dressmaking in 2 years. And after of your comments earlier about careers, there's a long tradition in the city schools of this, and I give this to you as something to commemorate this, and then also, yes. And then also, as we always like to do, a product of the scholarship of this law school, a book by my colleague James Simon, Lincoln and Chief Justice Tawney, Slavery, Succession, and the President's War Powers. You'll love this book.
Thank you.
And thank you all for coming. We'll see you in October. Thank you very much. Thank you. That was terrific. Yeah, really.
Yeah, I have to get it.